Alright, I'm not quite sure what I clicked right at the end of the other video, but if I highlight my standard deviations and arithmetic means, and I'm going to try highlighting oh, I think I know what I did. This time I'm not going to highlight the words, so I'm just going to highlight the values. Insert, scatter, just markers, and there it now it looks exactly like I want it. Well, almost. I don't need this legend over here, so I'm going to highlight just the legend and delete it. And I'm going to add some titles. So I go to Chart Tools Layout, and I'm going to add my title. This I will call Dominance Graph. I don't actually really like it right there, so I'm going to make it look a little better. And I'm going to add axis titles. This is the standard deviation annual. And I'll add the arithmetic mean annual. Let's see, I think I can just drag that. That looks okay. Alright, now what I need to do is add ticker symbols for each of my dots. You should have 8 dots on your graph, the 5 stocks, your portfolio, the market, and your fund. To add ticker symbols or labels to your graph, right click one of the dots and just well, what I did is first I just clicked on one of the dots and it highlighted that entire series, so now I can just right click on one of them and add data labels. Now it adds labels, but they're not the labels that I want, and I've never figured out a quicker way of doing this. So what I do is just pick one of my dots, highlight the label, in this case the 65.91, and I go over here and I look until I find the stock that corresponds to 65.91. And when I moved my graph, it changed, it unselected that. So that's Ruger, and I'm just going to type in my ticker symbol and do the same thing for the remaining ones. So the 2258 is McDonald's. The 1823 is my portfolio. The 1821 is my, let's see, the ViceX fund. Things are getting kind of crowded down here, so I'm going to scoot that over a little bit so it's to the left of the marker instead of to the right. The 1351 is the market, so I'm just going to type SPY instead of S&P 500 because that'll fit a little better. The 1136 is Family Dollar Stores. Ooh, and this is getting really messy down here. The minus 3.16 is Green Mountain Coffee Roasters. That ticker, that marker or label, I'm just going to move up above it. And this is Crocs, which I'm gonna move above it so I can read everything nicely. Now what I want you to do is circle the ticker and the marker for the stocks or any of the investments that are dominant. To tell if an investment is dominant, you can just eyeball it, but I'm going to draw some things on here to show you what you should be looking for. Basically, if I choose one of my investments, in this case McDonald's, and I look in the area to the northwest of McDonald's marker, so this part is to the northwest of McDonald's marker, if there are any stocks that fall in that area, McDonald's is dominated by them. there are no stocks that fall in that area for McDonald's, so McDonald's is a dominant stock. So what I want you to do is just highlight that. I think the best way to do it would just be to draw a little circle around it. Mine are awfully close together, so it might be better for me to just circle them by hand. But what I did was just insert a shape, and I chose the oval shape, and I'm going to format it to be empty. And I don't know, I think I'll put a nice red line around it. So there's one of my dominant stocks. Now let's just look at the portfolio. So using the same process, I'm going to start on the portfolios dot, draw a, or just evaluate this shaded area to see if anything falls in that area. If it does, it dominates the portfolio. So I can see that McDonald's dominates the portfolio, and that makes sense. McDonald's earned a higher return with less risk. So McDonald's would be a better choice than the portfolio. I can also see that Vice X earned essentially the same return as the portfolio, not quite, but close, but with less risk. So Vice X is better than the portfolio. So since there are investments that fall in this shaded area, the portfolio is not a dominant one, so I'm not going to choose it or circle it. Ruger is dominant in my situation. Even Vice X isn't dominant. If I start with Vice X's dot and draw or evaluate this shaded area, I can see McDonald's falls in it, so Vice X isn't dominant. In fact, for my investments, with my situation, the only ones that are dominant are McDonald's and Ruger. So I'm just going to copy that red oval and move it over and circle Ruger as well. But there are no other dominant investments for mine. You might have 3 or 4. I seriously doubt all 8 of your investments will be dominant. So print this chart and include it with your project. Alright, the final thing I want to explain in this video is how to complete the second exhibit, so my data sheet. Basically, all this sheet is needed for is for me to grade your project. I'm essentially going to type all of these numbers into my spreadsheet, and it will calculate most of the values in the summary table for me. So what I need you to do, and you can just type right into this document, and you can just use ticker symbols. You don't have to put the entire name. So I've got my Crocs. I can't remember my stocks. Green Mountain, Ruger, McDonald's, and Family Dollar stores. You'll just go to your spreadsheet and pull the information from your spreadsheet into this data sheet. So I want to know how many shares we initially purchased of each one. So I'm going to pop over to my spreadsheet. For Crocs, I initially purchased 560.54. I'm going to copy that and see if it works. Oh, it doesn't look good, so I'm actually just going to type it in. And it'll type it in the same way. You can copy it, but just make sure it looks good. So put all of your initials shares that you purchased here for all 5 of your stocks. I only need your stocks, not the market or your fund. Then we're just going to track how things changed. So enter your company's ticker symbols again. Make sure you keep them all in order. It will make my life and your life a lot easier. Now we're going to track the total value for each of those 5 stocks and track the number of shares. So now the midpoint of your 2-year time period, in this case March of 2012, I want to just track that for each of them. So copy this value, which I'm going to highlight in purple, copy that value to the Word document, and this value. In Crocs's case, it didn't change. The number of shares didn't change because it didn't have any dividends. But for some of them, well, A, I need to know that it didn't change, and B, if it did change, I need to know what the new value is. So copy those two values for each of your stocks here. Then sum these 5 values. That number that you get right here should be exactly the same as your portfolio's value for the same point in time. So it should be identical to my portfolio's value, which I'm highlighting in purple. If it isn't, then we've got some math issues that we need to figure out. Then I want you to do the exact same thing for the final month of your project. So copy those values. And this time I'm actually going to do this, but I'm going to do it in a spreadsheet so I can show you some math. So copy your total value, your number of shares. This total value should equal your final month's portfolio's total value. But again, I'm going to do this in Excel. So I'm just going to create a new tab. You don't have to do this in Excel, although it'd probably be easier if you did. So my 5 stocks: Crocs, Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, Ruger, McDonald's, and Family Dollar stores. And I'm just going to link their final month's total values. So this one, E2 in my particular case. And for Green Mountain, the same E2. And I'm going to sum those 5 values, look at this number 68,486, and verify that it's equal to this value that I'm highlighting in yellow. And if it's not the same, we have problems. What I want to do now is calculate the percentage that Crocs is of my total. When I first started, I had 10,000 in each of these for a total of 50,000. Now, none of them are worth 10,000. They're worth either more or less, and my total is 68,000. So to calculate my percentage of each one as a portion of the total, take each stock's total value and divide it by the total. The total will be the same for all of them, so I'm going to make it an absolute reference. Formatting it as a percentage and dragging it down. So I can see that Ruger did the best. Its 10,000 grew to the most amount. So it now has the highest weight. And Crocs did the worst. It now has the lowest weight of my portfolio. You should see the same relationship. The better stocks will have an increase in the weights, the worst stocks will have a decrease. It could turn out that all 5 of your stocks rose in value, but some of them will still have lower weights than 20% because they just didn't rise as much as the others. So these are the weights that you will pop over to Exhibit 2, I think this is. Oops. I didn't highlight. I thought I'd copied it, but perhaps I did not. So copying it, and I'm just going to paste it over here, and it didn't work. I think I have to highlight all these and paste it. There we go. So include those just for that very last month. Now, you can see that I don't have 20% in each of the stocks anymore. My weights in some cases are vastly different. What I want you to do is calculate how many shares you would need to own of each of the 5 stocks so that their weights would be back at 20%. So since Crocs is less than 20%, I would obviously need to own more shares than I do, since family or Ruger is higher than 20%, I would need to own fewer shares than I currently do. So down here, I want you to calculate how many shares you would need to own of each stock so that its weight would be back at 20%. This will have the number of shares that you currently own. You would just pull that information from your stock's final month. So my D2, so I know I currently own 560 shares of Crocs. Ruger, I own 481 shares, and so on. Put those numbers here, and then here solve for how many shares you need to own to get the weights back to 20%. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. I want you to try to figure it out, but if you can't, I'll help you. Now, over here, I just want you to pop in the total values for your fund for the beginning date, the middle date, and the end date. This will help me grade things. All right, have fun.